Well, after coaching a skater for many years, it's natural for a really close bond to form, especially in those tense moments before you take the ice. Now, it has been speculated that after Linda's loss, Christopher's struggles, and the end of your relationship with Michelle, that you seem to have a more hands-off relationship with your athletes now and more of a distance. Is this true? Is it something you've learned over time? And how close should a coach and athlete be in order for that relationship to be healthy?
Well, I think that what you're speaking of happened long before that instance.
Mm-hmm.
I've always maintained that what I do is my career. It's a job. It's a business, and I don't think getting very, very friendly with skaters and going to dinner with them and meeting in the evening and hanging out is smart for any coach. I don't do that because I just disagree with it. I think there's got to be a line there of respect and business. And early in my career, if a parent asked me out to dinner, or I found out very early that that parent would go on and tell the other people that, oh, I just had dinner with Frank. Frank and I did this, and just rub it in, and then the other parents would ask you to go out to dinner and you'd say, no, I'm busy, and they'd be hurt. And it was, a manipulative thing about, let's see how chummy we can be with Frank, and then, kind of rub it in the face of the other parents. So I learned to keep my distance and that I needed peace. That's why I've always had the house in Palm Springs, because I was able to leave Los Angeles and come here and just cleanse my mind. I've always been somebody who's able to walk out of the ice rink and not think about skating. And when things change like that, or somebody I couldn't sleep, then that was what really interfered in my relationship with that skater. If I can't go home and put it out of my mind and sleep comfortably at night and get up the next morning fresh and do a good job, it's a no-go situation. So that's the way I feel about that.
Smart.
Yeah. Well, soon after Christopher Bowman, you began coaching the precocious Michelle Kwan prior to the 1992 Nationals. One of the often repeated stories of Michelle Kwan's career is that she took her senior test when you were out of town. Many club test applications require a coach's signature. Now, given the involvement of Danny Kwan in Michelle's career, with him often watching all of her practice sessions, do you feel that this was solely the case of a young Michelle being overzealous, or do you think there was part of a family plan to have her ready for the 1994 Olympics?
Well, it's funny. I think that form came out where the coach had to sign it probably after that.
Okay.
That's why they needed a coach's signature. Well, Danny Kwan was, a very, very aggressive man for his daughter. He wanted success. They sold their house. They sold most of their belongings so this young girl could skate. He knew how talented she was and what she could achieve. And so he did everything he could to get her there. And I wanted her to be the junior national champion. And after I came back and she took the test, Danny told me it was all Michelle's idea, and that she decided she wanted to do it, and that she would accept the responsibility for doing that without my knowledge. I kind of wonder, is that really true or not? I know Danny wanted her to do it, and I think they were thinking ahead. But I came back and I said to myself, déjà vu, it's done. Move on. She's going to be a senior, and she did very well. So I don't think the decision to put her ahead was a bad decision. I don't think the decision to keep her back and let her be junior champion and then move on would be a bad decision. So either way, it was kind of like how I feel about the new judging system. It's, done, move on, deal with it. And so, we did.
Okay. So in 1994, Michelle surprised many by placing second at Nationals and being named the Olympic alternate at 13 years old. There was speculation that Michelle would wind up competing and replace either Tanya or Nancy. With so much media involvement during those 6 weeks between Nationals and the Olympics, did you ever feel that there was a strong chance Michelle would wind up competing?
I thought there was a very good chance because, Tanya Harding had to be charged. If she was charged and there was something against her record, she definitely could not skate. Mm-hmm. So we were sent to Lillehammer, and we skated in Oslo in a hockey rink, which was very interesting for Michelle because she'd never been on ice that was basically granite. Had never tried to put her toe in and do a toe jump on ice It was hockey ice, and but it was fun. We had a great time. I mean, we did so many things and went to all the skating events. We had tickets. We had a condo because U.S. figure skating wanted her on the sideline to step in at the last minute because she was on all the papers. And if Tanya Harding had ended up, being charged with something, she would have skated. So it was a wonderful experience for her, going back and forth from Oslo to Lillehammer and seeing the aurora borealis and seeing, moose. And it was great. Norway is a wonderful place. It should be, I think the Olympic Games should always be there. But she was ready, and that was true. It's a very true story.
Well, another wonderful experience, I'm sure, for Michelle and yourself was the 1996 World Championships. And Michelle skated beautifully at that event, but Chen Lu also had the performance of her life in the free program. So standing by the boards that night, were you aware of how Chen Lu had skated, and how worried were you that Michelle may not win that world title?
Well, I thought there was a difference between Lu Chen's skating and Michelle's skating to begin with. Michelle's program was a breakthrough program done by Laurie Nick. It was an entirely more sophisticated, not only looking, but the choreography. It was much more intricate. It was brilliant concept of music that had not been used. Richard Strauss's Salome had not been used ever, I don't think. And so it was really a remarkable program. But as far as comparing the two skaters, I thought Lu Chen was beautiful and lovely. I thought Michelle was beautiful and lovely. But I thought Lu Chen's jumps, although they were nicely done, did not flow out. I felt there was no speed, that she jumped up in the air and landed, but didn't go anywhere. And I thought Michelle, being young and in great shape, had great speed out of her jumps and exited her jumps as fast or even faster than she went in. And I thought there was a difference there technically between the two of their abilities at the time. But Michelle skated last, and we always found a little cubicle or somewhere to go to get away from the maddening crowd and just be together, alone. And we were there when Lu Chen's marks came up. And when she had 6 O's, Michelle said to me, "Frank, she has 6 O's. I don't think I can beat that score. I don't think I can beat that." I said, "Michelle, she had 6 O's, but the first mark was 5 8s. I said, they left room for you. You know that you can get a 6-0 in the second mark, in the performance mark, but there is room in the technical mark. They have left room for you to win this." And she said, "Oh, really? Oh, was it really 5 8s?" And I said, "Yes, and I think a 5 7." And she said, "Oh, okay." And then she sort of sparked up. And then she got on the ice and skated, fabulously and like a trooper. And she won. And it was controversial because Lu Chen was wonderful. I mean, she had that soft, beautiful quality to her skating. And, it was a great triumph for Michelle, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Following that event, Danny Kwan signed an endorsement deal with Rydell, which is said to have affected Michelle's jump consistency the following season. At the time, were you supportive of this switch to the new boots, and how big of a role do you think the new Rydell boots played in her inconsistency during the 97 season?
Well, I didn't know anything about the Rydell endorsement. That was done with Shep Goldberg, and it was done with Danny Kwan. So she arrived with these new boots on her feet, and it was a business deal. I'm sure they didn't think it would have any effect, or that I wouldn't be angry, or that, basically they probably thought it has nothing to do with Frank. We're just doing this. They're good boots. And Dan Riegelman, I believe, is the name of the man who was then president of that company. But what happened is the one right skate broke in wrong, and the blade was on an angle, so that when you looked at her skate, her right foot was way over on the outside edge, and it should have been fixed. And when we were getting to the World Championship closer, Dan Riegelman was, I believe, at the Nationals and said, that skate is wrong. And I said, I know, it should, definitely be shimmed or straightened and the blade put right. Danny did not want that to happen. He felt that he wanted Michelle to feel secure. He wanted her to feel calm and natural, and he didn't want anything upsetting the apple cart at this time. He wanted her just to go out and skate well. Well, it became progressively more difficult. And if you look at that nationals, you can pull it up on YouTube. You can see when she does a spiral, how far her boot is almost rubbing on the ice. And when she goes to take off on a triple toe loop, her right foot is way over, almost touching on the landing. And, anything that on that right back outside edge or right forward outer edge, it was very difficult for her to do. So she skated through the year. She lost that World Championships in Switzerland to Tara Lipinski, and then Tara Lipinski ended up eventually winning the Olympic Games. Michelle fought back and won the Worlds, in 1998, and the Nationals, which was a brilliant performance. If you want to see a performance, go watch YouTube of Michelle Kwan in 1998 in Philadelphia. One of the best performances ever done by a woman.
Ever.
I mean,
ever.
That goes down in the Hall of Fame. That was.
Don't forget too that she had, the fracture, and her foot was in a boot for months, a couple of months, and she got it off in December, like the first week, and then in the middle of, I think, January, she had to go and do that nationals. And when she took it off, she couldn't step on the foot, and it was atrophied. And she said to me, "I don't think I can do this. I can't." And I said, "Michelle, what did the doctors tell you about this situation, that when you took the boot off, your foot was going to feel like it's not your own? And then gradually, if you do what they said, a little bit of skating today, a little more tomorrow, gradually it would come back and it wouldn't be a factor." And so she got better and better, and she listened, and she was very good at listening. And so the last jump in her program was a triple toe loop, and that was off the foot. And she hadn't done that jump because to put the toe in, that leg was still mending. So that was the final jump in the program. So she skated through this program brilliantly, and then she got to the triple toe loop and did it. And it was such an emotional moment because everybody knew that was her fractured foot, and everybody there knew she wasn't doing toe loop in practice. And so it was a great, great moment, not only the skating, but emotion-wise.
Great.
Well, the 1997 season, as you said, was difficult, with Michelle losing her national title, yet she ultimately regained her form, only to step out of her jump combination in the short program at the 97 Worlds in Lausanne. Today, Patrick Chan is often near the top regardless of a fall due to the overall quality of his skating and his elements. Now, this fourth-place finish is actually debated because many people felt that Michelle's short program that year, The Dream of Desdemona, was so far beyond what any other lady in the world was doing at that time. And that fourth-place finish wound up costing Michelle the world title. Do you think that this result was correct?
No, I don't agree with her being fourth. If she was third in the short, she would have won the Worlds. And to put her fourth, on a little mistake like that. But don't forget, she turned out on the same right foot we were speaking about earlier on the spiral and the takeoff of the triple toe. So coming down on the landing of that jump, I believe it was Lutz, is on that right foot. And so the blade was way over too far on the edge, and that made her turn before the double toe. But I don't think that was a big mistake. She didn't put her foot down. She just did a turn. Don't forget they had Slutskaya coming up, and there were a lot of axes to burn there. They knew how good Michelle was, and, probably whatever was happening, behind the scenes about where they should place her occurred. And Americans don't get a break. They don't. Although Tara Lipinski ended up winning, I'm just saying, in the game of politics in skating, which does exist, Americans don't get a break. We don't have any friends. You can't really rely on anybody. The Canadians are not going to help us, that's for sure. I mean, in my naivete when I was younger, I always thought the Canadians were our friends. But in skating, I mean, they're wonderful people. I love Canadians. Love Laurie Nickel, who's a Canadian. But, you don't get any help from anybody, not when you're an American.
I agree.
Now, the fall of 1997 got off to a tremendous start with a blowout win over Tara Lipinski at Skate America for Michelle. Now, after that win, Michelle accepted an appearance fee to compete at Skate America. You talk about the business deals that were going on. And you reportedly did not agree with her participation and refused to attend the event. Now, you fired students for disrespect in the past. So, what made the difference? Is it that this was not Michelle, that this was other people in her life making these decisions for her? And what was the difference in your relationship with Michelle versus other students who you may have ended?
Well, I believe you're talking about Skate Canada. I thought you said Skate
Yes.
America. Skate
Well,
Canada.
after Skate America, Skate Canada. Yes.
Skate Canada. They were
Yes.
in. Of course, don't forget
Mhm.
she had become the darling of the media and the networks and TV, and it made a huge difference if she skated as far as what the viewers were going to be. I mean, huge difference. So they wanted her to do Skate Canada, but I knew that her left foot was very bad and that there was something going on with it. It needed rest. And it turned out, of course, that it was a stress fracture. But there was something going on there, and I didn't want her to skate that Skate Canada. And I said, no, you're not to do that. You need to rest because this is coming up, and the nationals are coming up. And uh, so I have a feeling what happened there is that the money was being dangled, a lot of money, because I know I received things in the mail that I wasn't supposed to see involving money. So there was a significant amount of money for her to go there. And so it was decided that she was going to go. And so it was not that I didn't want it. And so I kind of put my foot down and said, I'm not going with you. I told you that I didn't think your foot was ready, and I don't want you to skate this competition, and you've decided to go and do it. And that has nothing to do with me because I don't want it. So then you're going to have to go and do it yourself. If you do it, it's on your own. It's your own decision. And of course, she did the competition. She won, but on the last death drop, when she landed, she collapsed, and it obviously was very serious. And that's when they put her in the boot in the cast, and they took her off the ice. But then again, as Danny Kwan explained to me, that's probably a blessing, Frank, because now we know what's wrong with her foot. It's finally been definitely diagnosed, and now we have time for it to heal and to be right, and before the Olympic Games. So, even though it seemed like a negative thing, it can be a positive thing. And so I really have to agree with that. It was a positive thing that finally she was going to have a chance to get her stress fracture healed.
Wait, when did you first feel that there was something wrong with Michelle's foot? When did she start to experience pain? And then how stressed were you? You talk about how she was in the cast. How stressed were you leading up to the Olympic trials with your star pupil off the ice?
Well, with Michelle, she was one of the smartest skaters and athletes I've ever taught about her body. That's why she lasted 10 years at the top, because she knew how far she could push her body and when she had to stop. And so frequently when we worked out if something was bothering her, whether her back was sore or something, she would say, okay, I cannot practice the layback today, but I will do it in the run through. I'll do it then. Or she would say, my left foot is bothering me on the tap of the toe loop, and I can do it probably 3 times. And I'd say, great, all right, then that's your decision. You know your body. Make it count. Make the 3 really worthwhile, and then no more. So, that's what happened about that, is she was very, very aware of how much she could do. And so it was of deep concern to me, but actually not being able to diagnose it properly, which she was looked at by many people, but it was not defined as a stress fracture. It didn't come out until that final thing that happened at Skate Canada. So what we did is we backed off the things that were painful and that we felt that she couldn't do. And that was the way we went about the training. Was it a concern? Yes, it definitely was a concern, but we got through it, as you do with your athletes all the time. They all have aches and pains, and that's part of why my body is such a mess, because we just say, forget the pain, keep going, get up, and do this. And as athletes, we become tough. You know that, Jennifer. That you learn to live with pain, and so you don't always say, well, this could be a stress fracture, I'm feeling pain. You just think of, forget it. Come in tomorrow and do your triple toe.
Yes, it just becomes a nuisance. You think, can't you just stop? Because you have goals that you want to accomplish. Well, Michelle skated so beautifully at Nationals that season, and she went on to the Olympics and skated 2 phenomenal performances, yet she was admittedly cautious in the free program. And there are rumors that prior to the event, Danny Kwan told her all she had to do was stay upright and she'd win an Olympic gold medal. Was being cautious something that you had discussed before the Games?
Well, I, of course, always emphasize going out and going for it. I mean, I'm never told, I don't think the word being cautious or just stay on your feet has ever, passed my lips. Those are things that just words I never use. And I think that the Olympic Games is a little bit different than the World Championship or the Nationals. It's like going for the gold, okay? So a lot of times people win the Olympics that you don't think are going to win the Olympics. They're not the favorites, but it's like who goes down that hill the fastest on the skis and who gives it everything they've got, goes for the gold. That's kind of a feeling at the Olympic Games that doesn't really exist totally in the World Championship. And I think that's really what happened with Michelle not winning there, is that Tara Lipinski went out there, and believe me, she wasn't there to participate. She was there to win, and she gave it every drop of her blood. And that's how she won that championship. And Michelle skated very beautifully. Very beautifully. And I felt such pain for her there because I knew how much she wanted to win. But, you can't hold back at the Olympic Games. You can't. You have to go for it. And I think the same thing happened, in 2002 with Sarah Hughes. I mean, you could see her just go and do those triples, and maybe they weren't perfect according to today's standard, but she gave it everything she had.
Did you sense that Michelle was getting cautious before the Olympics? I mean, there are stories that you didn't even see her very much there outside of the practices.
Well, at that time, the American coaches were always schlepped out somewhere, 100 miles from where the events were. We were not provided housing, at the Olympic Games. And so I was in a place not very nice that was where the coaches were. We were all herded into a little coming up apartment, would be an apartment building after we left, with tiny little bathrooms. And it was quite uncomfortable. And the other coaches from the other countries were staying at the Olympic Village and had all the food available and the conveniences. And I think Michelle was at the Holiday Inn downtown with her father and mother and Shep Goldberg. And it was kind of a place where the media stayed. So we weren't close. And it was quite a long way. So what we did was we met at the practice times and at the arena. And sometimes after the events, we would go outside and try to find a van to get a ride home. We had one van to take all the coaches. Well, when you leave an Olympic event, there has to be 15,000 vans out there that all look the same Toyota van, the same color. And to get a ride home, it was horrendous. Sometimes we'd be looking for 45 minutes to try to find the driver. So the coaches in those days were not treated very well at an Olympic Games. It wasn't a very pleasant experience.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. And Michelle said that she took somewhat of a business trip approach to the Olympics. Looking back on it, do you think that may have been a mistake?
No, I don't think so. Michelle was a very smart girl and very smart about her body, as I've mentioned, and very smart about her career. And I mean, that's why it was so successful. I mean, she was very organized about her career, and the Kwans were very organized about her career. And, Michelle did everything right. She, said the right things at the press conferences and, shared what she felt was important to share and what was not important to share. And so she was very smart. And I mean, she came across, like a bouquet of roses. I mean, she did everything right. And she was, America's sweetheart for a very good reason, that she was a brilliant skater. And so after a while, when you're in the business for 10 years, as we would call it a business, then I think really it was important for her to take a business approach to her skating and her career. And so I think that was smart for her to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that columnists, pundits, and fans respected was that Michelle was extremely gracious and said all of the right things to the press after her loss. She never said that she was robbed. Privately, how difficult was it? And what is your role as a coach after one of your athletes suffers an Olympic loss that is so devastating?
Well, it depends upon the person and how intelligent they are. With Michelle, after it happened, I had very little time. And I think that other people have said they told her this. And I think I told her this. But, after a while, it all gets very blurry. But afterwards, I think I had very little time to tell her that she is going to have to face a lot of people. And she has to decide what she's going to say about this, and to come off as graciously as possible. And I knew how disappointed she was. And, it was, like the bottom falling out of the world for her, but that she had to get her act together and come out with a response that would be positive for her and for the future. And I think she did that brilliantly. I mean, I think she actually was more popular after the Olympics than Tara was. And, it was very, very heartfelt from her. What she said was the truth. What she said was what she was really feeling. But, she's a very lovely person. And so what she said came from the heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, Michelle continued competing after Nagano and really was a bigger star than ever. She was on television all the time that next year. Yet there were signs that perhaps Michelle was getting burnt out. We all remember her chopping off her hair and her decision to attend UCLA. And given all the demands on her in terms of endorsements, touring, appearances, pro-ams, and now school, do you feel that her heart was in skating at that time, and was she being stretched too thin?
Well, I think when you're a personality that is as famous as Michelle became, she was like a rock star, let me tell you.
Oh, yes.
and you have to reinvent yourself, and that's why I admire Madonna so much. Because, have you ever seen anybody reinvent herself again and again and stay on top for that number of years? And I think Michelle was trying to reinvent herself and keep going and keep interested in it and needed new input. And I think that's part of our breaking up, really, is that she probably felt that she needed to hear a different voice. For 10 years, she listened to this cranky old man tell her that she was doing this, not as well as it should be, or criticizing, and standing there watching, day after day after day. It must have become very tedious for her, after a 10-year relationship. And so maybe she just needed someone fresh and someone new to try to give, a little injection of, enthusiasm in her skating.
Well, Dave spoke of all the demands on Michelle at this point in her career, and one of the criticisms, particularly when she competed against Arena, was that she didn't up the ante technically. Earlier in her career, it was said Michelle was working on a triple axel, a triple flip, triple toe. She had such a beautiful triple toe, but do you think with all of these demands on her, it was even possible for her to increase her technical content?
I think that it was a very difficult thing to do, to make that many appearances and to be that much in demand and to have a career like she had that was financially very lucrative, and to go to the rink and just practice these things that require so much time and dedication. I think it was something that was maybe a little bit difficult juggling act for her. And so, but I've got to tell you something. When you mentioned triple axel, Michelle had triple axel in her program, and we went to the Arctic Blades free skating competition, which was a very famous competition we had in July. It was in the summer down at the Arctic Blades in Paramount, California. And she was doing the triple axel in practice, and she tried it in the program, but popped it. Wow. But it actually was in her program, so Michelle was practicing.
What year was that?
Gosh, I couldn't remember, but it was very early before she became really, really famous. Maybe that year she came second in the junior. She won that competition, so she would be down in the record books whatever year. But it was interesting, So, she was trying it. It certainly something within her grasp. Let's put it that way.
Interesting.
Now, during this time, Irina Slitskaya rose to prominence, and it appeared that politics were really coming into play because Michelle was no longer facing an American or Lu Chen. She was now dealing with the Russian brand of politics. And there was a lot of chatter that Michelle's programs were all the same and that Irina was just improving so much artistically. And we all saw Michelle experiment with new choreographers and styles as you talk about reinvention. Yet her Rush short program that Christopher Dean did, that was such a brilliant program, wasn't well received. And she lost with the Miraculous Mandarin at the Grand Prix final. Her Beatles short program wasn't particularly well received by the judges. Did you feel mixed messages from the judges? Because when she would go back to something like East of Eden, she would have so much success.
Well, first of all, I don't think Irina Slutskaya was a very beautiful skater.
Neither do I.
Me neither. That's three of us.
I don't think you can compare the two, and how she really achieved what she did, in comparison and against Michelle Kwan is kind of mind-boggling now when you go back and you look at the videos. And it's what's so great about YouTube and everything that we have now, that you can go back and look at it and say, oh my gosh, did that really happen like that? So I think that Michelle always did beautiful programs with grace and speed and very sure, and beautiful line in the spirals. And I don't think Irina was a beautiful skater. So comparing them and like, was one more exciting than the other? Did one have better programs than the other? Michelle Kwan's skating was Michelle Kwan's skating. So when she got out there to skate, you were going to see Michelle Kwan. So sometimes, you'd seen it for 10 years. Well, you suddenly weren't going to, see Ashley Wagner out there. You know what I mean? It wasn't going to be an entirely new, different person. You were going to see Michelle Kwan. So, maybe that's, the judges had seen it and seen it and seen it. Well, they were going to see it again because it was the best, as far as I'm concerned.
After losing to Arena at the Grand Prix finals, Michelle had back-to-back wins at the World Championships in 2000 and 2001. Yet the start of the 2002 season was a little rocky for her. She lost the Goodwill Games, lost a Pro-Am, and it seemed like her confidence was waning. At that time, what was going on? And do you think there were thoughts of Nagano haunting her now that it was an Olympic season?
Well, I don't think so. I have a different take on that. And that is the fact that when you are a brilliant sportswoman and you have a sense of your own body, you have a sense of peaking and when the time comes. And I think Michelle went and participated in those competitions. First of all, U.S. figure skating wanted her to do. Second, there was a great deal of money involved, because the networks wanted her to do, and Michelle wanted to go and skate well. But she probably was in her own head not putting it on the line, like, okay, this is when I'm going to be superb. And maybe even unconsciously that was there. But I know when the time came and it was time for the fat lady to sing, Michelle Kwan got out there and delivered, and that was, at those World Championships. So, there could have been a sense of timing, built-in timing in her own body of, when she had to really be superb.
Mm-hmm. Well, you speak of money and all the money that was going around, and there was a lot of potential money if Michelle was going to win the gold in 2002. Now, when Tim Gable was on our show, he spoke of the fact that coaches receive a percentage of their skaters' earnings. This is just a fact, and it's very common. Now, given all of the money that was potential, for Michelle to earn, do you think it played a role in your split with Michelle?
I did not have a contract with Michelle Kwan. I never had a contract with Michelle Kwan. The Kwans paid me very, very well. And when I went away, I received a significant amount of money. But I didn't have a percentage. And probably as a result of that, I started demanding a certain percentage. Now, I don't request an arm and a leg. What I do with a top athlete is I want 5%. And it doesn't mean for a lifetime. I have a lawyer draw up the contract, which they have to also agree on. And, a prize money and a lot of money that they're making, I don't think 5% is very much for me to listen to the music and spend the hours thinking about what they have to do and figuring out costume designs and listening to music with Laurie Nickel. So I think it's very, very little. And I know if you were a Russian, you had to pay the coach something like 60%, and they got 40. So because a lot of times those coaches acted as their agents. So I don't think of myself as being money hungry or demanding. But if I think somebody has world potential where they're going on to be on television and making a lot of money, if they're making a lot of money, I want a little tiny piece of the pie. And in fact, I have a contract with Evan Lysacek because when he wanted to come, I thought, well, you could be on the world team eventually. And so I did ask that. And as a matter of fact, Tanya Lysacek said to me, when did we have to start to pay you the percentage? And I said, you had to pay me starting last night when he made the world team. So this was in place. And it really read that if you make the world team and you're going to be nationally prominent, I want a little piece of pie. Now, with Dennis 10, I have no contract. And he is probably going to be one of the favored people to win the Olympic Games, and he's second in the world. But, the thought to me never occurred to me that Dennis probably would be in a position to be a big money maker. So I didn't demand that he pay me a percentage. So I'll have to deal with that with time.
Now that, get your pay in, Frank.
Yes. Now it's probably going to be a little more difficult.
Right?
But it's wonderful. I've never even talked about money with him. Yeah. I've given them a bill, they pay it. You know what I mean? Most of the people, I'll tell you who, talking about Tim Gable, his family were the most scrupulous, paying me every single cent of what they owed, like on the second. I mean, they were wonderful about their bills, and the best I've ever had. They paid me every dime they ever owed me, and graciously. Let's put it that way.
It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Now, you speak of how intelligent Michelle is, and I think that's something that we all respect of her. But we look back in 2002. Why do you think she chose to go without a coach in Salt Lake City? Were you surprised? Do you think it affected her performance? And why couldn't, if it wasn't you, anyone? We all look at the flip and how inconsistent it was getting for her. And I think it's something hard to go back and watch, and you just want to talk to Michelle and say, have a coach, with you at those competitions. I mean, what is your take on that? Because it was extremely shocking at the time, and it's still puzzling.
Well, Michelle and I talked recently for an hour on the phone. It was a wonderful conversation, and we sort of bared our hearts to one another. And why that really happened at that instant when we broke apart, I don't know what really happened. And I don't think she really maybe knows. Something happened. And yet we didn't discuss this in the hour-long conversation. We just talked about how much we cared about each other and her engagement and her, marriage coming up, and, how much we really loved each other. But it did happen. I think it was a huge mistake not to go with a coach. But I think that maybe Michelle felt that her dad had always been by her side all those years and had helped her with her skating and had, analyzed it, watched it, tried to correct it. And who knows what went on after she left the ice rink. I don't know. But she felt he was greatly supportive of her and would be probably good for her or good enough for her to be there. But I think it was a mistake. I think she really needed a professional. And I think she said in the media afterwards that she would never go to another competition without a coach. And so she learned something very important there. And I think everybody needs a coach, certainly in an Olympic Games, So it was an unfortunate occurrence, but it's life and things happen in life.
Danny did stand by the boards with Michelle in 2002 at the Olympic Games. Do you think he was a positive skating parent overall, or was he a detriment to her career at that point?
Well, I think that Danny overall was fabulous for her. I mean, I think he's not a stupid man. I think he supported his daughter, loved her, gave her emotional support and physical encouragement. I think it was a big positive thing in her life. I think that I make mistakes in my career, and I say things that I wish I could go back and change and not say. And I think that maybe Danny looks back and thinks that maybe he shouldn't have been there in that role. I don't know. But we're not perfect as human beings. I mean, I'm not the perfect coach in the world who who says the perfect thing at the right time. And so, I think looking back, he feels probably it was a mistake. But it was a man trying to do the very best he could for his daughter, loved her, supported her, and stood by her at that Olympic Games.
How difficult was it in 2006 to watch Michelle struggle with a hip injury? And did you think at the time, knowing she was injured, that she would be ready for the Games?
This is kind of amusing because Karen Kwan said to me after the Olympics was over, she saw me somewhere, and she said, "Did you think that Michelle was going to skate at the Olympic Games, Frank?" I said, "Karen, I knew very well she wasn't going to skate at the Olympic Games. I took one look at her body, and I knew she was not going to skate at the Olympic Games, because Michelle is not stupid. She knew what weight, she knew what kind of shape she would have to be in. And if she was serious about competing at that Olympics, she would have been physically much more fit. So I knew she wasn't going to skate. But she went there. It was a good media thing to do. And if she got some benefit out of doing it, good. But, she was also very kind to call up the Hughes girl and tell her to stay in shape, and to tell her that she basically might not be competing, and that it was important for her to keep her skating up. So that was very kind. I don't know many champions, world champions, who would do that for somebody who was an alternate, to call them and in person tell them that, better to be ready.
So knowing she may have not been ready to compete, why do you think Michelle went to Torino?
Well, I think she went to Reno because it was important in her career to go. I mean, she was, this was, as you say, a business. And to stay in the limelight, and, this is Michelle Kwan. This is a story. She's going to try to go to the Olympics and skate, and she's injured, and maybe something will happen that she can't. So that was a smart move on her part, I think. And I think it was smart on Shep Goldberg's part, is, to go and at least show up.
Mm-hmm.
So you speak about talking to Michelle on the phone a couple months ago. What is your relationship like with her today?
Michelle and I are chummy. I mean, we don't pick up the phone every week and say, "Oh, my darling, I love you and I miss you." I mean, it's not like that at all. I'm not like that with my skaters, period. I mean, but I think that when she wants to call me and needs to talk to me, she will, and I call her. And I wish so much I could have gone to her wedding in Providence. I wanted to very much, but it was a really bad time for me with my sister, and so I just couldn't go. But the pictures looked wonderful, and we talked after that. I have a lovely note on my desk here from her after that. And so I hope she's very happy, and that her new life is very happy. It sounds like it's wonderful.
She looked beautiful at her wedding, just gorgeous, the dress.
Absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Well, she is absolutely beautiful.
She is.
Too.
Yeah.
Yes.
After that split, I think there was a moment of nationals where there was a very almost uncomfortable moment that ABC, Michelle and you were, near each other but not together. How did your relationship mend? How did you, one of you just call the other one day, after so much history? How did you reconnect?
Michelle and I were never not friendly.
Mm-hmm.
We always spoke. I mean, we were always courteous to each other, and we always talked. And, so there was no antagonistic feeling between us. And we had so much time and so many wonderful experiences in 10 years of traveling all over the world and seeing things and, going to famous places, and that they're cherished memories. So there would never be any antagonism between us. I mean, I never understand in marriages how people can divorce and hate each other and need hatred to get apart, when at one time they loved each other very, very much and did wonderful things and had children. I mean, to me, how can you hate somebody that you loved? And so, I feel kind of that way about our relationship. Sure, we didn't work together anymore after a point, but there was always going to be that, affection and respect for one another. And certainly we spoke always. We never avoided each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, while you were coaching Michelle, you were also coaching Tim Gable, who went on to win Olympic bronze in 2002 under your tutelage. Now, I know Tim personally as a talented, intelligent, and funny, yet stubborn individual. What was he like as a student?
I describe Tim as being my little Jack Russell Terrier, and he's feisty. And, I mean, God help you if you got him mad, because. Well, I remember Alexei Mishin, the famous coach, Russian coach, at the Worlds when Tim came second to Plushenko, and he did something in practice that Tim didn't like. I mean, something kind of nasty that a coach doesn't do. And he said, "What is his problem? Doesn't he know if he makes me mad that I'm going to get him and that I'll skate better?" And he did. He skated great there, and but he was mad, and so that anger Tim used in his career, because he got out there and boy, every time he put it on the line, it was something else. I mean, you go back and look at that Olympic Games in 2002 and you watch those quads and you watch the last one as strong as the first one. And, all the way through the whole thing, every jump was, the same and, just as strong and a remarkable performance. Don't forget the boys were lucky if they could do one. And he did three, like nothing, bang, bang, bang. And, that's a long time ago. And I don't know anybody that's really doing three right now, not in the last World Championship anyway, like that, with that landing position and that strength. So he was a very feisty individual.
Well, in the fall of 2004, prior to the NHK Trophy, you famously fired Tim, yet you did coach him through the event. At the time, you said that you felt that the Toyota Sports Center wasn't the best training environment for him. Now, when Tim started not performing well, there were a lot of rumors about perhaps he was being self-destructive in some way. Were you aware of these rumors? And did you believe that there was a validity to them? And why did you decide to end the relationship?
Well, I decided to end the relationship because, when I talked about abuse, and like if you think you're in an abusive relationship, I felt that kind of happened between Tim and myself, and I had trouble going home and sleeping at night and letting it go. And we talked about it an awful lot before it happened. It didn't just come up like that. I mean, we spoke many times about like, look, Tim, I don't know how much more I can take of this. And so, but all of our interaction, with Tim and myself, it was always in public. I mean, it was never behind closed doors. It was always many coaches around, lots of skaters around. So everything that was going on was out there in full view. So there were nothing happened behind closed doors to make me antagonistic. So it was all right out there. And I had such respect for his ability, and for his talent. I began to get a lot of questions about him doing drugs. And I mean, I had officials ask me, I had, other coaches ask me. I absolutely have no knowledge whatsoever, ever, of that boy ever being involved in any substance abuse whatsoever. None. And somebody made a remark that I said that he had done drugs. Well, if anybody said that I said that, I would like to know who that person is, and I would like to sit them down in front of me and Tim, and I would like to go over that conversation, because I have never said, I have no knowledge whatsoever of him ever doing anything abusive to himself at all. As far as I know, he was always very healthy. He worked hard. He kept his body in shape, and he was a very determined young man. But that other area, I have no knowledge about whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Now, watching our interview back with Tim, it is clear that the event of the end of your relationship impacted his life in many ways. He remarked that he felt pushed out of the way for Evan, yet he also remarked that he had a very difficult time accepting the end of his career and that his body was no longer going to be able to do what it had previously done. Is there any truth to him being pushed out of the way for Evan? And how do you handle coaching two top skaters when the upstart begins supplanting the established champion?
Well, first of all, Evan was nobody when he came on this. I mean, he was like 8th or 7th in the Nationals. I explained to Evan when he came that Tim Gable was my priority and that he would have to wait for lesson times, and that he would be lucky to get 2 lessons a week, and that he would have to take from other people and until the time came when I could give him more time, but that I had a priority. It was Tim. So that was set up ahead of time, long before Evan ever came. So actually, I don't see ever Evan having anything to do with my being unhappy or being in an uncomfortable position with Tim whatsoever. That was strictly a personal thing between Tim and myself. I mean, Evan came up much later after that. I think in 2005, he was bronze medalist at the Worlds, but Tim and I had split apart before that. And, Tim struggled. As far as physical thing is concerned, something happened that I had set up for Tim, but Tim discontinued, and I felt it had an effect on his skating, although if you asked him, he'd probably say I was crazy. But I set him up with ballet people and made him go to ballet class and work with two teachers that I respected in Westwood. And they were very strict and very good. But I think that first year when I was with Tim, he came out with different posture and a different look. And kind of people were surprised when they looked at him and thought, wow, this is interesting. This is a better look, because of his back and his shoulders. He fired them. And he did it without asking me. And he just felt they hurt me. And so they were gone. And he just did not do it anymore. He would not go to that class because he felt they weren't helping him. Okay, well, I felt they were helping him, but I think maybe that had a little bit to do with his skating afterwards. I'm not sure. I mean, this is my opinion. It may be wrong or whatever, but I think he needed to keep that going, even though he was uncomfortable with it.
I would love to see him in ballet class.
I'm sure he was very good.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim could do anything he wanted to. I mean, he was one of those super talented people. I'm sure he could turn it on in a ballet class. Mm-hmm. Very. What you ever say?
I can't imagine him doing like the first position.
Yeah.
Like just the Tim that I know, he's and I see that you talk about how he's feisty. That is so the Tim. That's a perfect word to describe him. You do not get in Tim Gable's way.
But you know what? When he was with Laurie Nickel, and I was up in Canada with him, Laurie at one point, and she was working on positions and lyrical things. It was amazing what he could do. Maybe they weren't his favorite thing to do, and maybe he thought it was, silly or whatever. But when he wanted to, he could look like $1 million. And so, I have seen him in some beautiful positions.
Yeah, he's such a talented skater. And so is Evan Lysacek. And in 2010, Evan won the Olympics, thus making him your first student to win an Olympic gold medal. And some believe you've coached a myriad of skaters who are perhaps more physically talented than Evan. So what do you think it is about Evan that makes him an Olympic champion and sets him apart from your previous medalists?
That's very easy to describe, and it's called passion. He is the most passionate person about what he does of any skater I've ever taught. I mean, he will go at it with total heart, soul, and determination, and he will make it happen. And physically, he has his problems. I mean, this is somebody with arms like a Boeing 747 and legs that look, like Ichabod Crane. And it's so easy for somebody that's that tall and that slender to get all tangled up and get your limbs, all tangled up. So he had to work very hard about his positions in the air, where his legs were, control, feeling where his feet are, how to check out fast, the timing of the jumps, getting in and getting all of those arms into center. That's a long way to go. And he was very good at it, but determined and passionate.
Well, you speak of those arms, and one of the things is that all of your skaters are thought of to be very pristine, very clean, and very regal. Yet when you get Evan Lysacek in a competition and he's feeling passionate during a footwork sequence, those arms and legs flail and go around with such vigor. That's something that I think many of us had never seen from any of your students before. We always think of them kind of almost taking on your personality. Have you ever talked about dialing them back?
Well, I think that things have changed in skating too. I mean, we have all of these in the free program. It's not a free program. Why they ever call it a free program is ludicrous to me, because it is just as much a required and set program as the short. They might as well call it the the longer short program or whatever, because you're not free to do anything. But to reach all these bullet points for upper body use, it includes arms, it includes head, it includes torso, so that when you get into the footwork, if you want that bullet point, you've got to move everything, and it's got to, you got to move like a windmill to hit, all those bullet points. So, and I think Dancing with the Stars helped Evan a lot. I mean, I think he looks remarkable right now in his interpretation of music. So that's part of it. I think that how to get the bullet points has changed. So the footwork might look a little different than it used to with my other skaters who probably grew up under the other system.
Well, unfortunately, Evan withdrew from his events this season due to a sports hernia, and I trained alongside Evan for a couple years. And you talk about passion, and he was undoubtedly the hardest worker I've ever seen. Yet sometimes I felt like his work ethic borderlined on masochistic. He would do those triple axels in the programs over and over and over again. So knowing that he struggles with overuse injury, how often do you have to step in and tell him to kind of rein it in a bit or to relax? And do you ever feel that he does overtrain?
Definitely, I think that's his tendency to overdo. And I've told him, a number of times I've said, that's enough. You've done, 6 long programs today. I think that's enough for any human being, and you're going to hurt yourself. And then later I found out that, and he's told me, and we've kind of laughed about it, is that after I've told him to get off and that's enough, he's gone over to the other rink down in somewhere and done another session. So, I mean, he's maniacal, a maniac.
He's a maniac.
Is that a word?
It's a word that describes him very well.
I think that he, the more, the better.
Yes.
That's kind of his philosophy. The more I do, the better. But right now he's got to be very careful because he's on the mend from very serious surgeries. And so he needs to be very careful, just as Michelle had to be when she got back on. But he's listening to the doctors and he's being careful, and he needs to be.
So what is the status of his health today?
He's doing very well. I think that the limberness and the comfort in all the positions isn't there yet. He can do them, but there's a certain amount of pain involved. And, he's got to be able to loosen up, the repair work that has been done and be able to, comfortably do all these positions. So he's getting there. And we've done all the triples except the axle. The axle we haven't done. He can do double axle, but we're holding back a little bit till his skate is right. Of course, again, putting the boots and the blades together so they're right, as you very well know, Jennifer. And they have to be right before you go out and do a triple axel on a pair of skates that aren't set right. So we're struggling with that right now.
How has your relationship with Evan evolved now that he is an Olympic champion? Does he listen to you in the same way that he did when he first started training with you?
Evan is exactly the same with me, and I'm the same with him. I don't hold anything back. I look at him as somebody, a skater, who's trying to win an Olympic gold medal. I don't look at him as the Olympic gold medal trying to win a gold medal. I don't think of it that way. And Evan has always been terribly respectful of me and very kind, has always said very kind things about me. And so I think our relationship is very, very good. It's based on mutual respect.
Mm-hmm. With reports of Evan owning a home in Vegas and now, living with Veer Wang at times in Los Angeles and skating at the Quan Rink in Artesia, how often do you actually coach Evan now that you're in Palm Springs?
I see him not as much as we will. We're trying to work out right now a training site for the Olympics and deciding, now I have Dennis and now I have Evan. We're 2 of the top skaters in the world. And both, vying for a possible Olympic gold medal. And so I have to get them together and figure out an ideal training situation. I saw Evan twice last week on Monday and Tuesday. And we had a great time together. And that was up in Lake Arrowhead. He comes down here sparingly. It's a long drive. Lake Arrowhead is closer to LA than Palm Springs is. So, it's a long way. And so because I've decided to basically kind of semi-retire and come to my house down here, and I thought I'd be teaching less and enjoying teaching here. But now my career again has gone up because Evan has decided to compete, and I had a boy finish second in the world. And so now I have to adapt to that and figure out how we can get to spend more time together.
Mm-hmm. Well, the quad is an extremely important element in men's skating. Evan has struggled with stress fractures in his foot from training this element and has often struggled with rotating it completely in competition and being credited for it. Do you feel he is capable of rotating and landing the two quads needed to compete with the best men in the world today?
Well, I think that he doesn't need two quads, actually. I think he needs to do a quad beautifully. And, you can look on YouTube or anywhere and see fabulous quads he's done. And last summer, he did the quad beautifully again and again. And up in Sun Valley, a lot of people filmed it. And it's very funny how people come into the rink with their iPhones and will videotape people falling on their butt. And then they and they seem to take great pleasure in seeing, the disasters and putting on YouTube. So I'm sure there are many of Evan out there, but he did beautiful quads like last summer. And before he seriously got hurt, as it got closer to competition time into Skate America this last season, and then he really got, severely injured. So I expect that it will be there and that he will do it beautifully, as is visible on YouTube. And don't forget, the boy who won the free skating this year at the World Championship did one quad beautifully and two triple axels beautifully and almost everything in his program beautifully. And so that was with one quad.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that Evan will come back if it becomes clear that he may not beat Patrick Chan on the world stage?
I think Evan will come back and try. I mean, he's a competitor and an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what sport is all about. The sport is not expecting to win. Sport is getting out there. The definition of what is a sportsman, it means you compete with all the right motives, integrity and character and all of that. And he has all of that. So he would like to compete and do the very best he can. I mean, we have no control over the results as we've seen over the years. We have none.
Well, I ask that because, in many sports, when people make comebacks, there's often a sense that they're afraid of being measured up to what they did, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, especially they've had time off, which is why, I asked that.
Well, yeah, but if they have fear, then they shouldn't be doing it to start with. You hit the right word, fear, get out of the sport. Don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's really poignant. Well, as we wrap things up, Frank, the U.S. women recently won back their third spot on the Olympic team at the World Championships, and you recently coached Mirai Nagasu, who many believe is one of the most talented U.S. ladies, yet she struggles with discipline and focus. She placed 7th at Nationals last season. Do you think she has what it takes to make a second Olympic team, or do you think it's too late for her to rebound and be back on the podium at Nationals?
Well, I think Mirai definitely has the talent and the ability. She is a gorgeous skater and has some stunning positions that other skaters can't reach. Also, she has great speed over the ice. I mean, she goes faster than anyone with ease, and those are great assets. I think that emotionally, she has great problems with her own life, being happy with what she's doing and going to school and a family situation, a lot of things. I think she has heavy things in her head, heavy baggage that she has to work through. And if she can get that right, I think she has a very good shot at it. Because when she skates clean, she's remarkable. And I mean, you look at the Olympic Games 4 years ago, and I mean, she could have won a bronze medal there, really. And she was great, and so she can do that. But I think it's up to her to fix what's going on mentally.
And one of the issues with her skating is that she struggles with the under rotations. She has skated for a long time. This has been a problem throughout her career. What do you think it's going to take for her to fix this problem?
Well, I think discipline and, coming into the rink and working on specific exercises that are designed to fix that and to be happy doing it and to be cooperative on time and dedicated to making it right. I think those things have all been missing, and I think it's due to emotional problems.
Okay. Well, let's end on a fun note. We end all of our interviews by saying first and last name of someone in the skating world. And Dave and I want to hear the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this person's name, okay?
All right.
All right. No holding back here, Frank, okay?
Oh, dear. Okay.
All right, we'll start with the good one. Maribel Vizinoen.
Intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Michelle Kwan.
All around best.
Mm-hmm. Danny Kwan.
Supportive.
Nicole Bobek.
Peck's bad girl.
Angela Nicodemus.
Gorgeous.
Carlo Fassi.
Brilliant.
John Nix.
Fun and brilliant.
Christopher Bowman.
Super talented, naughty.
Ooh. Carolina Costner.
Beautiful, statuesque.
Tara Lipinski.
Feisty, good competitor.
Maria Butyrskaya.
Controversial.
I just think of those arms. You know when she would land her jumps and those arms, she would press down so hard? Just relax.
I always think of her willing that sow cow. No matter what, she would will that sow cow to get up in the air with that right side of her body. Irina Slitskaya.
Vivacious.
Alexei Agudin.
Tough.
Evgeny Plushenko.
Different.
And our final name, Tatiana Tarasova.
Bigger than life.
She is.
And our final question, what is your favorite Michelle Kwan program?
On My Own from Les Miserables.
Good answer. Frank, this was a thrill. I've had so much fun talking to you. You are a genius. Everything they say about you in terms of being so wise as a coach and as a human being is completely accurate. This was a pleasure for me. So thank you so much.
This was fantastic. We worked on these questions for 2 weeks, coming up with what we were going to ask you, emailing back and forth, and this lived up beyond our wildest expectations. So we really can't thank you enough. This was such an honor and really a thrill for both of us.
Well, it was fun. Okay, let's do it again sometime.
We'd obviously like to thank Frank Carroll for all of his time and insight today. This interview was beyond our wildest expectations. I think Jenny and I both really wanted to interview Frank, and when it all came to be and Frank responded really quickly to us, we were floored. We immediately went into question mode and outlining and brainstorming, and we actually had a week off between our World's Recap show and this show, and it might have seemed like we weren't filming. We were actually working on the website and getting this together, and this lived beyond my personal wildest expectations for this interview. I think there were so many things, and we just went into it. We were going to ask every last question that we had for Frank Carroll, and it was beyond.
Our question, yeah, I don't mean our question. I think was 9 pages of questions.
I mean, and Frank went there, was engaged the entire time. We cannot thank him enough. I mean, we really enjoyed it. I think he gave us such a disciplined approach to life, and there's just so much to learn from him and the success that he has had as a coach and as a person. It really, speaks for itself. So
I agree. I think this is an interview that people can learn from, whether they're in the sport or not. He's just somebody who, I think the focus is so often on his students, on the skaters on the ice, that we rarely get a chance to have a 2-hour conversation with the man behind the students. And he was so forthcoming. And again, we went into every single topic we could think of, and we're so appreciative to Frank for taking the time today to speak to us and always just speaking so openly. It's difficult, and he went there, and we're really appreciative.
Yeah, and we hope that you really enjoy our new website. We really want to connect skating fans and really create a portal for, a destination of skating, of information and interviews, and really reveal the people beyond the sport in order to, really bring out the personalities in skating in a way that we don't feel is being done currently in the media, given the current climate. So we hope that you all enjoyed our interview with Frank. We obviously would like to thank all of you for tuning in, and we hope that you enjoyed this as much as we did. We want to thank Kevin Kwasniewski for our graphics, Philip from Craigslist for all of his lifeline help, and we'd obviously like to thank our new website guru, Nick Santillo, who is absolutely fantastic with us.
Yeah, we have a great team and we have a great audience, and as always, give us feedback with this new site. This is a place for all of us to just be together and to share our love for this sport. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress, and it's growing, and we hope that it grows in an organic, wonderful way. So as always, even though we are in our Sunday best, we would like
to remind... It is Easter tomorrow.
Yes.
We're dressing up for it, yeah.
We would like to remind all of you to hold an edge.
And look
sexy.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.